opposite of any man's thinking. What do you mean? To be the first, I have to be the last? No way! Even from childhood, we are taught, you have to be number one. You have to be valedictorian. You have to be the gold medalist. You have to be the first. You have to be the fastest. You have to be the brightest. You have to be the wisest. You have to be the tallest. Everything is superlative. But that's, and then Jesus said, no, the first will be the last. The servant of all. Wow. This is totally contradictory to human thinking. A lot of people fight so they can be first. And yet Jesus is saying, it's useless. Just be the last. You'll be the greatest. You don't want recognition here. The greatest gift is the recognition from above. That's the best recognition. That's why I appreciate those who are in nursing homes. Those people who are not even in nursing homes, but they take care of the old, the elderly, the sick. The teachers. Remember the teachers? You know how much sacrifice the teachers make? They don't make as much money, and yet the sacrifice. They use their personal time doing the work. They use their personal supplies doing the work because they don't have enough adequate supplies. Those are the real heroes. Those are the last that will be first. Is that clear? That's why I believe many Sundays ago, Father Ivan mentioned this. And I know because I have that article too. He read that it's not the square footage of your house that will gauge your entering heaven. It's not the number of cars you own. It's not the number of cars you own, you have. It's not all these things. It's not how much gold you have, diamonds, pearls, sapphires, not those, none of those. If you have a big house, how many people did you entertain in that house? You see those houses, sometimes you see big, beautiful houses, landscape complete, everything you're looking for. And then there's a big gate, and they're closed all the time. It only opens when the car is passing through and then closed again. Is that good? That's not being the last, that's for sure. You know what I mean? That's worldly again. It's not our titles or honors. I don't care. You have many B's, many M's, many D's. There are some people. Oh, we are inviting our very special speaker. Our speaker. There's the name, and there's so many letters after the name. Remember, those letters don't mean anything in heaven. They don't mean anything. How many poor people did you help? Those are the things that. And Mother Teresa, no other person, Mother Teresa of all, has understood that from the very beginning. She has devoted all her life. You know, Mother Teresa is not from India. You know that? Where is she from?
Albania.
Albania. She's Albanian, yeah. And she spent all her life taking care of the poor. The poorest of the poor, so they said. The poorest of the poor who can never repay her. What can those poorest of the poor give you back? Nothing. Maybe sickness, if any. Right? But she devoted the rest of her life for their care. for the well-being. Even the lepers, those dying on the street sides, she cleansed them. She would embrace them. You know why? She was asked, why are you doing this? Because I see Jesus in them. That's what she said. I see Jesus in these dying souls on the side of the street. From malnourishment, disease, all kinds of things. Life is not what we usually think. And this is, in one sentence, the gospel last Sunday. There's no crown. No. This is the same thing I say to people, to our other Christian brothers, where I tell you, as early as February, late January, you will see Easter bunnies in stores. Everybody is saying Easter. Has anyone talked about Good Friday? No one talks about Good Friday. It's all about Easter. Only the good times. That's the glory times. Suffering, Good Friday, forget about it. Resurrection, Easter Sunday. Then this sentence here. There's no crown without the cross. You can't have Easter Sunday without passing through Good Friday. Do you know that this is the essence of last Sunday's gospel? That's the bottom line. Then I'll give you next Sundays. So I'll do the both ends right now. Next Sundays is Mark 10, 46 to 52. So this is last Sunday. This is next Sunday. What's the story on Sunday, next Sunday? Has anyone bothered to read that? Actually, I sent it to you, the good news. The story of Bartimaeus. Next Sunday is the story of Bartimaeus. What do you know of this Gospel account? Did I tell you that the Gospel of Mark, of the three synoptic Gospels, is the first that was written? And Mark was actually written in the year 68 AD. 68 AD, so some 40 years after Jesus' resurrection. It's quite time. 40 years is quite a long time. You remember what happened 40 years ago? Do you? Well, somehow you probably do. Oh, 40 years ago, maybe you were in school. If you had children 40 years ago, you must be old and gray by now. But that's when Mark wrote the Gospel. And he was the first to write the Gospel. Because in the Gospel of Matthew, there was no... See, nobody really knows when they were written. But we have bits and pieces of evidence to support and somehow narrow down the time frame. the time frame within which these individual gospel accounts were written. So we were able to trace the book of Mark written in the year 68. The book of Matthew and Mark did not know each other. There's no indication, there's nothing to indicate that Matthew knew Luke nor Luke knew Matthew. They did not know each other. So when the individuals wrote the gospel accounts, they used Mark. 98% of Mark's gospel is in Matthew. Imagine that. 98% of the gospel of Mark is found in Matthew. And 87% of Mark is in Luke. So that's good enough proof that they copied from Mark. Both of those two men, Matthew and Luke, copied from Mark. But aside from that, they had other things too. Where did that come from? That's why we had fragments of ancient writings and sayings that Mark, Matthew, and Luke used in addition to Mark. That's why they had these other things. And the reason I mention this is because we're doing the Gospel of Mark. See, this is a continuation of last Sunday. This is next Sunday. This is last Sunday, 46 to 52. And this is the story of Bartimaeus. What do you know of Bartimaeus? Very good. He was blind. Something profound. If you really study the sacred scriptures, you will find about these very interesting things lying underneath each individual gospel account, which is what we try to do here. The story of Bartimaeus. He was blind, yes. This is one interesting thing about next Sunday's gospel. This incident in Jesus' life, he was on his way to Jerusalem before Palm Sunday. You understand? This account of Jesus' life took place on Palm Sunday, when Jesus was traveling on a donkey entering Jerusalem. I didn't know that until I studied. And this is the last miracle Jesus performed before the Passion. Last miracle. Before the Passion. Why is this significant? Why is this healing of the blindness of Bartimaeus has to be the last miracle of Jesus before the Passion? Very big significance. Bartimaeus was blind. Remember, Bartimaeus was blind. He couldn't see a thing. And he just heard that Jesus was passing by. So he started screaming on the side, Jesus, son of David, son of David. So therefore you will know next Sunday's gospel with the phrase, son of David. Very important phrase. The Jews believed from all those prior generations that the Messiah should come from the family of David. And how did Jesus become the son of David? his foster father, Joseph. If you look at Matthew chapter 1, Matthew chapter 1 has the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Starting from, wait a minute, are you Catholics? Starting from Abraham. As opposed to Luke started from Adam. Luke started from Adam. Matthew started with Abraham. All the descendants from Abraham down to Joseph, who was betrothed to the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Wasn't Adam the first?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is Matthew started with Abraham. That's what I'm saying. It's interesting, but Bartimaeus, who was blind, was the first to believe that Jesus was the Son of David, and hence the Messiah. The first. Aside from the apostles, of course. Because the apostles were with Jesus all the time. But Bartimaeus, before the passion of Jesus, entering Jerusalem, has believed and has seen Jesus as the Son of David, hence the Messiah. And what did Jesus ask? Because the more people were stopping him from screaming, the more he shouted, right? And then what did Jesus ask Bartimaeus? What did Jesus ask Bartimaeus? Do you see it? I'm talking about next Sunday's gospel now. You see the good news? What did Jesus ask? What do you want me to do for you? Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Call him. And throwing off his mantle, he sprang up and came to Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? You see that? And the blind man said, Master, let me receive my sight. Go your way, your faith has made you well. And Bartimaeus received his sight and followed Jesus on the way. There's profound meaning of this. And I have the verse-by-verse commentaries here for you. Last miracle before the Passion. Bartimaeus represented Israel. In Mark chapter 10, Bartimaeus actually represented not just the Jews, but us, the Gentiles. How did Bartimaeus represent us? Very simple. Bartimaeus was blind, and he asked for his sight, and he gained his sight. He received the light. You and I are blind. All we do is ask the Lord for the light, and He'll give us the light. The Jews were non-believers. Oh, there's something, I'll digress a little bit. My professor said, and he's a scholar of the Bible, he's theologian of all theologians. You know what he said? God chose the Jews, Jewish nation, as his people, right? And the Jews became very proud because of that, to this day. The Jews are all very proud. We are God's people. All of you are not. We are. Essentially, that's what they said. And then my professor said, yes, they were chosen as God's people because of all people, they're the most stubborn, they're the most disobedient, and the meanest people. Yeah. My professor spoke Aramaic. My professor spoke Hebrew. My professor spoke German. Of course, he spoke Greek and Latin. I believe him. Because of all of these ancient writings, that's why God chose them as his people. But what have they done through these 2,000 plus years? They have not believed Jesus. So God was right. They were disobedient. They were mean. They were not the good people that